In the heart of Victoria Island, there lived a woman named Amora Oronko. She was the kind of woman people stopped to stare at, not just because she was beautiful, but because she carried herself like a queen. Tall, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that never smiled, she lived in a white mansion surrounded by guards and a tall black gate that never opened for strangers. People said she was heartless. They said she had no family, no friends, just money. And they were right. Amora was alone. Her husband, Dayo, had died 3 years ago, and they never had children. Since then, she worked, traveled, and came home to a profound, deafening silence. That was her life. But that life was about to change, all because of one rainy afternoon. The sky had turned a dark, bruised gray that Thursday. Amora sat in the back of her black Range Rover as her driver navigated the snarled traffic. Outside, the rain splashed hard against the windshield. On the sidewalks, people ran for cover. Then the car stopped at a red light. "What's that?" she said, her voice sharp, squinting through the window. Her driver looked. There, near that pole, that boy. He was a skinny boy, maybe 12 or 13, barefoot and shaking in the downpour. In his arms he held 2 small babies, wrapped in what looked like thin nylon bags, their tiny faces pale, their cries faint but sharp even through the thick glass. He stood on the road divider, his head bent as the rain poured down on all 3 of them. "They're always doing this begging trick, Ma," his driver said, his voice laced with a casual cynicism. "Some of them even rent the babies." But Amora wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on the babies' faces. Something about them made her chest feel tight. The left twin lifted her face briefly, and in that fleeting moment, Amora saw them. Her eyes were hazel, the same rare light brown color as her late husband's. It couldn't be, but then the second baby looked up and the same eyes stared back. Her heart jumped. "Stop the car," Amora said, her voice a sharp command. She opened the door and stepped into the rain, ignoring the water that soaked her designer dress. She walked straight toward the boy. "Who are you?" she asked. He asked. I'm Toby," he stammered, his eyes full of fear. "And these babies?" "They're my sisters," he admitted, his earlier lie forgotten. "Their mother, she died when they were born." Amora looked from the boy to the shivering infants and back again. The resemblance was undeniable. A story she had never known, a secret her husband had taken to his grave, was now standing before her, drenched and crying in the middle of a traffic jam. She turned to her driver. "Bring them in," she said. "All of them."
The inside of the Range Rover was another world. The heat was on, and the silence was broken only by the gentle hum of the engine. Amora sat stiffly, her eyes glued to the 2 babies now lying on her lap, wrapped tightly in her soft cashmere scarf. They were asleep, their small faces peaceful, but their skin was cold to the touch. Toby, the boy, sat at the edge of the back seat, his hands folded, water drooping from his hair onto the expensive leather. He looked nervous, like a child who had accidentally wandered into a palace. The car turned into her estate, the long, curving driveway leading to a giant white mansion. The gate opened slowly. Toby's mouth dropped slightly. "You live here?" he finally asked, his voice a quiet whisper. Amora didn't answer. When the car stopped, 2 uniformed workers ran out with umbrellas. One opened Amora's door. Another reached to carry the babies, but she pulled back sharply. "Don't touch them," she said. Inside the house was warm, the air filled with the scent of lemon polish. A giant chandelier hung above the marble floor. Toby stopped at the door, looking down at his muddy feet. "I'm dirty," he said. Amora stared at him for a second, then walked to a nearby cabinet and brought out a towel. "Step in, wipe your feet." He did as she said. "Ngozi," she called out, and a woman in a green housekeeper's uniform rushed in. "Yes, madame." "Get a warm bowl of water and tell Dr. Martins to come immediately." Amora walked to the living room and gently placed the babies on a soft white couch. One of them stirred and let out a small cry. Toby ran over. "Is she okay?" "You know which one is which?" Amora asked. He nodded. "That's Chidinma. The other one is Chisum." She blinked slowly, repeating the names as if testing how they sounded in her mouth. She didn't know why she had brought them here. It had happened so fast. One moment she was heading to a meeting, the next she was cradling twin babies that didn't belong to her. Or maybe somehow they did. Her heart didn't want to believe it, but her eyes couldn't forget what they had seen. Those hazel eyes, her late husband's eyes. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man in a white coat walked in with a medical bag. "Doctor, thank you for coming quickly," Amora said. "Please check them. They've been in the rain." The doctor bent over the babies. After 10 minutes, he looked up. "They are cold and their breathing is shallow. They are very weak, probably from hunger, but they are stable for now. They need rest, milk, and close care." As the doctor set up a small drip bag for each child, Amora turned to Toby. "Where do you live?" Toby lowered his head. "I sleep at the back of the church, under the wooden shed." "Just you and the babies?" "Yes, since my mommy died." Amora pressed her lips together. The stone in her chest felt heavier. "Who was your mother?" "Her name was Adana. She was a teacher." "And your father?" Toby hesitated. I don't know much. He used to visit sometimes. I just remember his eyes." "What about them?" Amora's breath caught. "They looked like theirs," he said, pointing to the twins.
That night, the babies were placed in a clean, soft crib in one of the guest rooms. Toby was given a warm bath and a new change of clothes. He ate rice and stew like a boy who hadn't seen a real meal in days, then fell asleep on a small couch near the baby's room. But Amora didn't sleep. She stood by the window in her bedroom, watching the rain fall. She thought about Dio, her late husband. For 10 years, he had told her he loved her. He had told her it didn't matter that they couldn't have children. But he had lied. If this boy was telling the truth, then Dio had betrayed her in the worst way possible. At midnight, Amora opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo album. There he was, Dio, smiling beside her at their wedding, his hazel eyes full of a love she now realized was a lie. Her hand trembled as she closed the album. "I need to be sure," she whispered. She picked up her phone and dialed Dr. Martins again. "Doctor," she said, her voice like ice, "I need a DNA test. Compare them with Dio's sample in the hospital's records." An hour later, Dr. Martins arrived. He took swabs from the baby's cheeks while they slept. "The results will take 2 days," he said. That evening, Amora went into her late husband's old study. It was the one room she hadn't touched since he died. She opened his desk drawers, searching for something, anything. Then she found it, a small wooden box. Inside were letters. Love letters, not from her, but from someone else. "Dio," one read, "Toby was so happy you visited. I wish you could stay longer. I wish you would just tell her. Tell your wife the truth." It was signed Adana. Amora closed the box, her hands shaking. The next morning, she saw Toby on the floor playing with the twins. He had tied one of her scarves into a small toy. They were laughing, real happy baby laughter, a sound she had never heard in this house. "Are you going to send us away?" he asked, his voice small. Amora took a deep breath. "I don't know yet, Toby." The next day, the DNA results arrived. Dr. Martins handed her the envelope. She waited until he left, then opened it. She read the first line. "DNA match confirmed. Probability of paternity 99.98%. Her breath stopped. She dropped the paper and stood up, her hands on her head. "They're his," she whispered. "They are really his. The twins were her husband's daughters. Toby was his son. He had a whole secret family. He had lied to her for years. Tears rolled down her face. She didn't wipe them away.
Amora couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her body still, but her mind racing like a car without brakes. The DNA test was real. The babies were Dio's children. Toby was his son. Her late husband, the same man who told her they were in everything together, had built a secret life right under her nose. Her chest ached, not just from anger, but from the betrayal, the shame, and the crushing weight of the truth. By morning, she had made up her mind. She needed answers, not just papers or guesses. She needed to know who Adana was, the woman her husband had hidden for years. She called the private investigator she had used once during a board dispute. His name was Mr. Folleran. Sharp, quiet, fast, and expensive. "I want everything on a woman named Adana," she said, her voice cold. "She lived in Enugu, had a son named Toby, and died 2 years ago during childbirth. I want to know where she lived, where she worked, who knew her, everything." Mr. Folleran didn't ask questions. He only said, "You'll hear from me before the day ends." Later that afternoon, he called back. Her full name was Adana Ume, he said. She taught at St. Luke's Primary School. Very respected, very quiet. Lived in a one-room apartment behind the school. According to neighbors, she only had one regular visitor, a man with a big car from Lagos. Amora gripped the phone tightly. She died in a small clinic, complicated delivery. What about the boy, Toby? He stayed with a neighbor for a while, then disappeared. The neighbor said he refused to go to an orphanage, said he'd take care of his sisters himself. Amora closed her eyes, imagining the boy, barely 12, standing alone against the world. Did she ever ask Dio to tell me? There was a short pause. "One of the letters the neighbor found," Folleran said. It said, "Tell your wife the truth, Dio. It's time." That's all. Amora swallowed hard. It's time. He had never found the time. That evening, Amora found Toby in the garden trying to rock one of the twins to sleep. She said, "I found out more about your mother today," she said softly. He looked at her with wide, curious eyes. "She was a good woman," Amora continued. "A teacher, quiet, honest. She loved you and your sisters very much. She did her best." He looked down. "She used to say, 'We had a big family somewhere,'" he said quietly. "She said when we grew up, the truth would come to us." Amora nodded, her throat tight. "It has." He looked at her, his expression a mixture of hope and fear. "You're my stepmom." She paused, surprised by the word. "Yes, I guess I am." "I'm sorry," he said, his voice a whisper. "For what?" Amora asked, her own voice gentle. "For everything," he replied, looking at the grass. "For being here, for making your life complicated." She cupped his chin and lifted his face so their eyes met. "Toby, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't ask to be born. You didn't ask to be hidden. That was my husband's choice, not yours." "I just wanted to keep them safe," he said quietly, his gaze shifting to his sisters. "That's why I kept moving. I begged for food. I washed cars. I slept in churches. I did everything I could." "I know," she said. "You're brave." "No," he shook his head. "I was scared every single night." Amora felt her throat tighten. She looked at the baby in his arms. Chisholm yawned, her tiny hand resting on Toby's shoulder. Amora placed her own hand gently on the baby's back. "You won't have to be scared anymore," she said, "and you won't suffer anymore." Later that night, Amora stood in front of her mirror. For years, she had lived like a statue, strong, polished, cold. But now, she felt as if her chest had cracked open. She remembered how she used to pray for a child,
how she had blamed herself for the emptiness in their home. She had even thought of adoption once, but Dio had refused. "No child we didn't make will feel like ours," he had said. And now, here she was, in a house full of children Dio had made with someone else. And the painful, beautiful truth was, they already felt like hers. The next morning, Amora went into the twins' room and found Toby already awake, changing their clothes. "You're always up early," she said. "I don't sleep much," he replied. She sat on the bed and watched him. "Toby," she said, her voice soft but firm, "how would you feel if I made sure you never had to sleep in the rain again?" He looked at her confused. "You mean stay here forever?" "Not just stay. Live here. Go to school. Be safe. Let your sisters grow up here too." He blinked, his eyes wide. You want us to live with you?" "If you want to," she replied. He didn't answer. Then suddenly he burst into tears. He cried like a boy who had been holding back a river of grief for years, dropping to his knees and covering his face. Amora didn't hesitate. She went to him, knelt beside him, and pulled him into a hug, letting him cry until the storm inside him finally quieted. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered into his hair. "I promise." The news didn't stay quiet for long. In a house like Amora Oronquo's, everything speaks. The guards, the drivers, the housekeepers. Once the first whisper left the mansion gates, it spread like fire across the high streets of Ikoyi and the gossip tables of Banana Island. She brought in a street boy. They say the twins are her husband's children. Did Dio really cheat on her all those years? The rumors rolled and twisted like a storm, and Amora knew it wouldn't be long before the people who mattered most would come knocking. Not out of care, but out of fear. Fear that she was about to change the balance of power in the Oronquo Empire. And she was right. They came on a Sunday afternoon. 3 black SUVs rolled into her compound like kings arriving for war. Chief Emeka Oronquo, Dio's elder brother, a bulky man with a sharp voice, walked in with his chest out, followed by 2 younger men in agbadas who wore dark glasses indoors. Amora didn't stand when they entered her living room. She only crossed her legs and looked at them. "Good afternoon," she said. "We need to talk," Chief Emeka said, not smiling. She gestured to the file on the table. "Read for yourself." He opened it and read the DNA report. His face didn't change, but his fingers tightened on the paper. "Where did you find them?" he asked. "In the rain, begging for food." He slammed the file shut. "And you brought them into this house, just like that?" "They are Dio's children," she said, her voice low. He pointed a finger at her. "That doesn't mean they're yours." Amora stood now, her presence filling the room. "They carry the same blood that runs through my husband's veins. That means they carry a part of me, too." The youngest cousin raised his voice. "So, you want to name a street boy as an heir?" "Toby is not just some street boy. He is Dio's son, which makes him more of an heir than any of you." "You're making a mistake," the cousin laughed bitterly. Amora took a step closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I made one mistake before. I trusted Dio completely. I let him lead everything while I played the quiet wife. Not anymore." Chief Emeka stood. "We will fight this. In court, in the press, wherever we have to. Go ahead, but you will lose, because, unlike you, I have the truth." After they left, she stood shaking, not from fear, but from fury. The nerve, the boldness. She heard small footsteps and turned. Toby stood in the hallway. He had heard everything. "I can go if you want," he said softly. "I don't want to cause you trouble." She walked to him and placed her hands on his shoulders. "You're not going anywhere," she said. "They've always been angry. Now they are angry because you exist."
That evening, the house was tense. Even the staff were quiet. But Amora didn't care. She called her lawyer. "Draw up the paperwork," she said, her voice like steel. "For what, madam?" "I want legal guardianship over the children, and I want Toby enrolled in the best school by next week. Uniforms, books, everything." "Are you sure, Ma?" his lawyer asked, his voice cautious. "This will trigger a war." "I'm not starting a war," she said. "I'm finishing it." The next day, the press came knocking. A headline had already gone out. "Widow of late Deo Oronquo takes in street children, claims they are his secret heirs." Photographers camped near her gate. Her board members started calling, urging her to take a break, to handle the matter privately. But Amora refused to hide. The following week, she held a press conference. She walked into the small hall wearing a plain black gown, no jewelry, no makeup, just the undeniable power of the truth. "My name is Amora Oronquo," she began. The room silent, the only sound the frantic clicking of cameras. "I am the widow of the late Chief Deo Oronquo, a man I loved deeply, a man who, I recently discovered, had a second family outside our marriage." Murmurs rose in the crowd. She raised a hand for silence. "I discovered this not through rumors, but through fact. I found his son begging in the rain, holding his twin sisters. I ran a DNA test. The results were clear." She held up the file. "This is real." The room fell quiet again. "I know this shocks you. It shocked me too. But the truth doesn't care about our feelings. It just is." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the reporters. "Now some people believe I should hide these children, erase them, pretend they don't exist. But I will not. Those children carry my husband's blood. And unlike others, they never asked to be born in secret. They never lied. They simply existed." A reporter raised a hand. "Madam, are you adopting them?" "I'm doing more," she said, her voice ringing with a newfound strength. "I'm raising them. I'm giving them my name, and I will protect them from family, from courts, and from anyone who thinks being born in the street makes you less human." Another reporter asked, "What about the company?" She smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. "I built half of it. I will not be pushed aside." A third reporter shouted, "What if Chief Emeka fights you?" "Then," she said, her voice dropping to a low, powerful promise, "he will learn what it feels like to lose."
3 days after the press conference, everything in Amora's world had changed. Her phone didn't stop ringing. Some calls were from investors pretending to be concerned. Others were from board members, warning her that she was ruining her legacy. One even tried to bribe her to handle the matter privately. Amora listened to them all, but she didn't change her mind. Toby and the twins were her family now. One morning, she stood in the twins' room, watching them sleep. Toby entered quietly, holding his new school bag. He was dressed in his uniform, a white shirt tucked neatly into navy blue trousers, his shoes polished to a shine. "You look sharp," Amora said, smiling. He blushed a little. "Thank you, Ma. Are you ready?" He nodded. She bent and adjusted his collar. "You'll do well." Toby looked down. "What if the other students laugh at me?" She paused, then met his eyes. "Then you hold your head high. You face things no other boy your age has. You've taken care of babies. You've begged in the rain. You've survived. He looked up at her slowly. You are not just some boy, Toby. You are strong, you are smart, and you belong. He smiled, his eyes glistening. She reached into her purse and handed him a small notebook. Your dreams, she said, write them in there. One day you'll read it again and see how far you've come. He hugged her tightly. Thank you, Auntie Amora. She smiled and whispered into his ear, you can call me Mom if you want to. He pulled back, his eyes wide with a hope that was almost painful to see. Really? She nodded. He whispered the word, a quiet prayer. Okay, Mom. Later that day, her lawyer, Barrister Adetoyo, arrived with papers in hand. Everything's ready, he said. You just need to sign. Amora took the documents. The first gave her full legal guardianship over Toby, Chisom, and Chidima. The second updated her will, naming them as her legal beneficiaries. She picked up her pen. Once I do this, she said slowly, there's no turning back. Yes, Ma, he replied. She signed. Meanwhile, trouble was growing outside her gates. Chief Emeka had not taken her press conference lightly. He had gone to court, claiming Amora was unfit to care for the children due to emotional instability, and filed a case to freeze the family estate. The courtroom was packed on the first day. Chief Emeka's lawyer stood. My lord, we are here to protect the legacy of the late Chief Dayo Orunkwa. The woman before you is grieving, unstable. She has taken in unknown children and is trying to hand over everything to strangers. The judge nodded slowly, then turned to Amora's side. Barrister Adetoyo stood, holding the DNA report. My lord, there is no rumor here, there is fact. But more than blood, we must ask, what is family? Is it just a name? Or is it love, sacrifice, and truth? Because if it is the latter, then Madame Amora is already their mother in every way that counts.
The courtroom was quiet. The judge looked from one side to the other, his expression unreadable. He leaned forward. I will review the documents and give my ruling in 3 days, he said. Court is dismissed. Outside, the media flooded Amora. Madam, are the children really Dayo's? Why are you doing this? Is this about revenge? She ignored them and entered her car, her face a calm mask. But inside, her heart was beating fast. She had shown the world the truth. Now she just had to wait and see if the world cared about the truth at all. Back at the mansion, Toby met her at the door. How did it go? He asked. She forced a smile. We'll know soon. He looked worried. If they take us away? They won't, she said firmly. But if they do, she placed her hands on his shoulders. Toby, look at me. He looked up. No one is taking you. You hear me? He nodded, but she saw the fear in his eyes, and that broke her more than any courtroom ever could. 3 days later, the ruling came. The judge's voice was clear as he read. After reviewing the submitted evidence, including DNA results, statements of care, and witness reports, this court sees no reason to remove Madame Amora Oronquo from her legal guardianship. Her actions, while untraditional, have been found to be in the best interest of the children. Amora's breath caught. Furthermore, the judge continued, the estate remains under her control. The board shall respect the late chief's family rights as they now stand. Case closed. There was silence. Then Chief Emeka's lawyer stood angrily. We will appeal. The judge replied, his voice like stone, You are free to try, but the court has spoken. Amora stood quietly. She turned to Emeka. Now what? She asked. He scowled. You think this is over? She smiled. No, but it's my turn to win.
The court battle was over, but the damage it left behind was still in the air. The house felt different now. It was quieter, not because there was silence, but because everyone was still trying to breathe again. Amora sat alone in her room the next morning, sipping tea. The sunlight slipped through the curtains. It should have been a beautiful day. She had won. She had protected her late husband's children. But her heart still felt heavy. She had fought so many people, her late husband's family, the board, the court. But there was still one person she hadn't truly faced yet. Herself. She walked to the mirror. Her eyes were tired. Her face looked older. She remembered the Amora from years ago, the woman who laughed easily, who believed in forever. That Amora was gone. Downstairs, Toby was sitting on the floor, playing with the twins. He had arranged some blocks into the shape of a small house. Chidinma knocked the blocks down and laughed. Chisom tapped her tiny hands. Amora watched from the stairs. Toby had changed. He now walked like someone who belonged, not someone expecting to be kicked out. He looked up and saw her watching. He smiled and waved. She came down and joined them on the floor. The three of them surrounded her immediately. Chisom crawled into her lap. Chidinma touched her earrings. Toby reached for her hand. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Anything. Did he love you? My dad?" She paused. "Yes," she said. He waited. "Did he love you?" "I think he did in his own way," she said softly. "But he also hurt me." Toby lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry." "You don't need to be," she said, cupping his chin and lifting his face gently. "You didn't ask to be born. You didn't ask to be hidden. That was his choice, not yours." "I just wish I'd met you earlier," he whispered. She swallowed hard. "Me too." Later that evening, after dinner, she called him into her office. "Toby," she said, "tell me what's really going on in your heart. You've been quiet since the court ruling." He shrugged. I don't know how to be here sometimes. I don't know the rules, how to sit, how to eat, how to talk in front of rich people." Amora smiled a little. "You don't need to change who you are." "But I don't want to embarrass you." He looked up, his eyes honest. "Even at school, when I say I used to live on the street, they laugh." She stood and walked over to him, holding his hand. She said, "Let them laugh. But it hurts." "I know. But every great story starts in a small place. Let them laugh now. One day they'll read about you in books."
The next week, Amora invited a public speaking coach to work with Toby. She also hired a private tutor. But she did something else, too. She started teaching him herself. Not just schoolwork, but how to sit in a board meeting, how to speak to adults, how to understand money, how to ask questions without fear. One evening, while she was explaining how company shares worked, he paused. "Do you really believe I can do this?" She looked at him, her gaze steady. "I wouldn't be wasting my time if I didn't." He nodded slowly. "Okay then, I'll try." But things weren't always smooth. Some nights, Toby woke up from bad dreams. Other times, the pressure of trying to be good enough made him cry. Once, he screamed at the nanny and ran into his room. Amora found him on the floor, his head in his hands. "I'm tired," he whispered. "What if I fail you?" She sat beside him. "Then we start again." He shook his head. "What if I disappoint you?" She turned his face to hers gently. "You can't." He looked confused. "Why not?" "Because you're not here to be perfect, Toby," she said, her voice soft. "You're here to be loved." Weeks passed. Toby grew stronger. The twins started crawling, then walking. The mansion that once echoed with silence now danced with the noise of life. Soft giggles, tiny feet, music from the kitchen, and Toby's voice asking endless questions. One day, as Amora was leaving for a meeting, the twins ran to the door and hugged her legs. Toby rushed forward and handed her a packed lunch. "We made it for you," he said proudly. Amora looked at the sandwich. It was misshapen, crushed at the sides. She held it like it was gold.
I'll eat every last bite, she said. But outside the walls of their new home, trouble was still near. The company was now divided. Some board members still doubted her judgment. At one meeting, a member spoke out. "Madam Amora, with all due respect, we think this new direction is too emotional." She replied calmly, "I made my decisions based on truth, not emotion." Then she cut in, her voice like ice. "And the boy you all dismiss is smarter than most of you in this room." She stood, walked to a table, and placed a file in front of the board members. "This is a proposal from Toby," she said. "He wrote it after visiting our company website and finding 3 years of outdated data. If a 13-year-old can find your mistakes, then perhaps you are the emotional ones." Back at home, Toby practiced piano in the evenings. One night, as his fingers moved slowly across the keys, Amora watched him. "You're gifted," she said. He smiled, a shy, nervous expression. "I'm just trying." "No," she said, her voice full of a quiet pride. "You're rising." But their new life was not without its storms. One night, around 2 a.m., Amora woke with a bad feeling. She rushed to the twins' room and found Chisholm burning with fever. Amora bundled the twins into the car, called Toby, and they raced to the hospital. The doctor said it was a viral infection. Chisholm was placed on a drip. Toby sat beside her bed, holding her hand. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. Hours passed. Then finally, the fever dropped. "She's stable now," the doctor smiled. Amora breathed out, a wave of relief washing over her. She looked at Toby, who hadn't moved from his post. "You have done more for her than most adults would do." Toby looked up. "I love her." "I know." He then looked at Amora, his eyes shining with an emotion he had never expressed before. "I love you too." She didn't speak, but she reached out and pulled him into a hug. And for the first time in a long, long time, she cried. Not from pain, but from healing. The house felt full now, not just with people, but with life. 3 years later, Amora stood in the rain, under an umbrella, at the same spot where she had first seen Toby. The traffic, the noise, it was all the same. But she was different. Back at home, Toby, now 16, was finishing a speech for a school competition. The twins were reading books beside him. When Amora entered, they all ran to her. "Where did you go?" Toby asked. She smiled. "I went to where it all began." He nodded, then looked at her, his eyes full of a new, quiet confidence. "Mom," he said, the word now as natural as breathing, "I want to study law. I want to fight for children like me. I want to fight for mothers like Adana." She looked at him, at this incredible young man who had been forged in the fire of loss and had emerged with a heart full of purpose. "Then you will," she said. He smiled. "I'll make you proud." She pulled him close, her own heart full. "You already have."